The Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, we're aware that DFO is revising the Shellfish Aquaculture Act later this year. And we know there's some good players, but there's some bad players in that sector as well. And DFO's relationship with the shellfish aquaculture industry is a stunning example of industry capture, wherein input from science, federal and provincial commissions, and environmental advocates have been totally ignored over the past 18 years. Well, practices of the industry and certain players in that industry have been allowed to degrade the marine environment. And the people of Denman and Hornby Island and Bain Sound, where I live, they are calling for changes to the conditions of license of shellfish aquaculture regulations. They need this to happen, Mr. Speaker. The impact of unchecked intensification without proper monitoring or enforcement of environmental impact of aquaculture on vital ecosystems has resulted in continued intensification and proliferation of industrial agriculture, which has been destructive to the ecosystems that sustain the health of our region. They're calling for the government to use the guidelines of the Aquaculture Sustainability Council. Will the minister do that?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my honourable colleague for the question. Our government is committed to upholding the independence of scientific work and ensuring that decisions are made on the best available science. That's why under this government, DFO worked with Canada's Chief Science Advisor to develop and adopt the scientific integrity policy. DFO is a science-based department, Mr. Speaker, and high-quality, impartial science is integral to DFO's work.
Sure. Mr. Speaker, herring is a vital source of the ecosystem. It's the bedrock, the forage fish for our ecosystem that wild salmon, cod and halibut and shorebirds rely on, and of course mammals. We've seen a decline in herring on the west coast and the only open area is in the Salish Sea right now out of the 6 herring grounds. We've seen the decline of 129,000 tons of biomass just in 4 years to a predicted 58,000 next year. Now, the government says they rely on Indigenous and local knowledge, but Mr. Speaker, the First Nations have been asking for it to be curtailed or shut down, and so have local communities. Will the minister do the right thing and curtail the herring sector or shut it down till a whole of ecosystem management plan is in place?
Well, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we agree that Pacific herring fulfills a vital role in the ecosystem, and their conservation is always going to be a primary objective. We also recognize Indigenous fishing rights and the important economic benefits generated from Pacific herring. We're continuing to consult with First Nations, with harvesters, and with other interested stakeholders on this shared objective, and we consider their valuable input when we inform our fisheries decisions. But, Mr. Speaker, we are a science. We do base our decisions on science, and we will continue to do that.
Member.
We're glad to see this government and this House unanimously support my motion M151 to tackle marine plastics, and part of that motion was to deal with ghost and derelict fishing gear. And we're glad to see the government come up with $8.6 million, but some of that went to industry. We're glad to see it go to Ocean Legacy Society, Emerald Sea Society, good players. But there's concerns about the funding going to the very industry that created the pollution itself. What we were calling for was a polluter pay system, which include better standards for enforcement and monitoring with traceability, the banning of toxic materials, and of course, extended producer responsibility for those that create the plastic pollution in itself. Will the minister apply those principles and do it soon?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the retrieval of ghost gear is extremely important, and a number of stakeholders are involved in that process. We have seen a significant uptake on this program. We want to make sure that we're retrieving these harmful gear from our waters. There's no place for ghost gear in the ocean. We need to make sure we do everything we can to mitigate the problems that it causes, not only for our whales, but also just with regards to our ocean sustainability. Mr. Speaker, we have invested $8.3 million in the Ghost Gear Fund, and we're going to continue to make sure that we address this long-term challenge that we have.
30 seconds left. The honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, we are in a wild salmon emergency right now. We are seeing the collapse of wild salmon under this minister's watch. Tonight, we have not even heard her commit to more funding. An example, where I live in Clayoquot Sound, we had 2,300 chum salmon return in the Tranquil River. Normally there's 15 to 35,000 chum return? Will the minister triple emergency funding to help rebuild those river sheds and help save wild salmon? Or is she going to be the minister that's known for watching the collapse of wild salmon?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our government is absolutely committed to making sure that we do everything we can to address the decline of wild Pacific salmon. We know that there is no silver bullet to this. There is a number of ongoing issues related to things like climate change, habitat degradation. We've seen the Big Bar landslide. There's been a number of challenges with regards to salmon. We are taking every available measure to make sure that we protect the stock. We're going to continue to do that very hard work, Mr. Speaker, and I look forward to working with my colleague on that.